Hello, everyone, and welcome to our fourth episode of Join Us at the Table. I'm Albany, and I'm an environmental studies and public health double major, and I'm a student staff member at the Center for Food Innovation and Entrepreneurship.
And hello, my name's Brandon. I am a senior management and information systems major, and I'm also a student staff member at the Center for Food Innovation and Entrepreneurship.
So for our fourth episode today, here with us, we have Alison Mountford, the CEO of Ends and Stems. So Alison, if you want to get started and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in the industry.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's so lovely to speak with you today. And I love hearing college majors and the programs. It's such a great time of learning, and it makes me feel very hopeful too. So my name's Alison. I'm a chef. I've had multiple food businesses throughout my career in the last 15, 16 years. Currently, I am working on a business called Ends and Stems, and that came, I'm sure we can get into it a little bit more, but it came as a result of my past businesses, which were actually delivering food and catering and, working in food production. And then I saw this big hole in how much food was being wasted in our own homes. And as somebody who was producing food, it was horrible to see it go to waste. And then as I really started learning about the environmental impacts of it, it inspired me to launch Ends and Stems. So the mission behind Ends and Stems is to help busy people and families cook at home, but inadvertently waste less food. So it's about inspiring and education and really tools. So it's not just saying, hey, here's why you shouldn't waste food, but here are some tools to make that easier for you. As I was trying to figure out what the business model would be, I got to interview almost 1,000 busy families, many of them moms, because women, whether they work outside the home or not, still make the majority of the shopping and cooking decisions at home. And they said, overwhelmingly, they were concerned about food waste and the environmental impact, but thinking about how to do something about it was just too much. It was just one more thing at the end of the day. And often it would just be a regret, like upon going to bed, that they thought, oh, we shouldn't have wasted this, or I should be better for the planet, but I just can't fold that into my life. So I thought if I could make a plan and give them recipes that reduce food waste while they're making dinner without asking anything else of them, it would sort of kill two birds with one stone. And hopefully that's happening. So I got into the food industry, I guess, to answer that question. I got into the food industry out of a love of cooking. I've always been creative. I like working with my hands. When I was graduating college, I was not sure what I wanted to do. I had majored in anthropology, which is endlessly interesting, but I wasn't sure how that equaled a career. I didn't want to get a PhD or work at a museum. And I just like to build things. I really like to put things together, and was always sort of artistic, and food just kind of became my medium. It was the substance that I wanted to play with, and then we got to eat it afterwards. And then that combined with wanting to build a business, which is also building, but a little more intangible. So I just put those two things together, and I started my first food business, which has evolved, as I said, over the years.
So Alison, how has working in the food industry and with Ends and Stems changed your perspective on the food system? So maybe how have you chosen and changed your ways of eating and buying food?
Yeah. Working in the food industry, anyone who knows me will tell you, it really opens your eyes to the bigger picture of the whole thing. I think the common thought of our food system stops at what's in the grocery store or what's in restaurants, but people don't think about how that food ended up in the grocery store and how it gets restocked and what happens to it afterwards. And another big thing that has really that I'm really interested in is how things are labeled and described, how much marketing is really involved in what we eat. So much of it really is sort of a facade of people trying to sell us something, and it doesn't have that much to do with even something like organic is a question I get a lot. Putting the organic sticker on a piece of produce or something is an expense, a huge expense for a business. So there are tons of smaller farms that are growing their food at a level that is at least as good as organic, some of them even better, but they can't pay to have the organic sticker on it because it's so expensive. And then going even further into that, the companies that do pay for the organic sticker aren't being as regulated or as inspected as I think the average consumer assumes. There really aren't those safeguards in place to make sure that your organic produce is kind of this, idyllic version of what most people think organic is and should be. The other thing is seeing how it's all connected. So as I get deeper and deeper into the environmental side of food, you really see, if you're corn in Iowa and you're putting pesticides on it, that gets into the lakes and the rivers and the groundwater, and then that soaks into the Missouri, which leads into the Mississippi, and suddenly we can trace those pesticides to shrimp in the Gulf of Mexico, but because it was, farmed in that way in Iowa. And same with salmon and out in the ocean, but it's all the runoff, and we're just really connected. So that is something I'm really passionate about. And at times, I admit it's actually just very overwhelming to think how connected we all are, because suddenly the problem isn't just, your choices in your house and your grocery store, but it's the entire world. And I do have moments where I sit here and think, how are we going to fix the whole planet? Like, this is too much. But one of the reasons I built Ends and Stems the way that I did, and one of my favorite pieces to target, is that you have to believe that your individual actions will matter, and they can inspire your neighbor, which inspires your neighborhood and your community. And then that leads to your state making changes. And eventually, we can get a big enough group of people that petition for systemic change that will change the entire world. But if you spend too much time thinking about, the organics system and all the lobbyists who are, thinking about organics not from a truly environmental or organic point of view, but from a marketing and a business point of view, it gets way too overwhelming. You have to dig in on these tiny little footholds and support the restaurants where, you can ask the chef where they're buying their ingredients, or you can go to your farmer's market and talk to the person who actually planted these vegetables. So it isn't to say that that's the only way you can shop. That would be, very time consuming, and it's expensive. That's very elitist. But every time you can make these small decisions to reconnect on a meaningful level like that, we have to believe that that matters. And the more we connect with others who are making those same decisions, or we can influence anyone else in our family or our circles to make those decisions where they can and support small food businesses, I have to believe that that matters. I think it does.
Yeah, it definitely does. Yeah, thanks for bringing up those questions. I know a lot of consumers have kind of predicaments when they're buying about whether or not what's organic and what's not. And it's an interesting point to bring up the other sides of the story, like what the sort of money and politics involved in it. And this idea that everything's interconnected, I think, is commonly, or I guess not as commonly understood by people. So
yeah,
great,
and
those
it
are
can
really
be,
good points.
it really just can be very overwhelming. I think it was last Halloween, there was a thing going around about boycotting Nestle because of what they do with water and, their the way they're sourcing their chocolates. So I wanted to give out, my house gets like 400 trick-or-treaters to it. It's one of those neighborhoods in San Francisco where everybody comes to. So I have to buy a lot of candy on Halloween. And I was trying to participate and get something that I felt like was within my brand and my belief system to give away. And it was so hard to find something that wasn't owned by a company that had practices that I didn't believe in. And I ended up finding a small local company to do it. But you really start to see how everything is connected. So my advice to people is just find a small foothold, see the bigger picture. You can worry about it a little bit, but the way that you should act against your fear of that, bigger picture spiraling out of control is just find these small toeholds and get in there and, do something where you can, but don't let it overwhelm you because you can't do everything.
That's great advice. So kind of segueing into a next sort of idea we want to bring up, we conducted a poll to see are some of the most commonly wasted items by our CFIE community.
Cool.
And some of these items I'm sure that you hear about a lot are broccoli stems or carrot tops or peels of vegetables. So we're just wondering, through your experience, if you have any recommendations that we could repurpose these really commonly wasted items.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so those are the three. So broccoli stems are my favorite because ever since I was a little kid, I actually prefer the stems to the floret anyway. I love the watery bite of them. I find them crazy useful. So if your stem has a lot of dried off parts, like the brown parts, you can peel off the outer layer and actually go ahead and dispose of that. But a lot of times if you get a fresh, stalk of broccoli, you don't really even have to peel it, just scrub it and then just slice off the very, very end, like a 1/4 inch at the bottom. Take off the florets, use those for your typical, steaming or whatever you would do with the top parts and the stalks. You can roast them, that's great. And then that stem is so useful. So I would chop it up, dice it, and do a sheet pan dinner, which is one of my favorite, super quick, just throw a bunch of veggies on a tray. Serving it with something like a combination of equal parts miso and butter is a huge hit with broccoli. It tastes so good. And just dice it up like you would a carrot or an onion. Toss it in with any vegetable roast like that. My other, one of my other favorite ways to do it is obviously in a soup. I think the consistency of a broccoli soup, if you do maybe 1 potato and some veggie stock, an onion, celery, if you use the broccoli stem rather than the florets, you actually get a smoother and better consistency to your soup. When you add the florets, it kind of, you get all those little bits and it kind of has a weird grainy consistency. So when I make broccoli soup, I actually don't even use the florets ever. Broccoli stems also freeze really well. So if you have a lot and you're overwhelmed by them at the moment, pop them in the freezer. And then next time you need to make broccoli soup, you've got your stems ready to go. And then the last way is thinly slice them and make a stir fry. The thin discs of broccoli, just the stems, they make an awesome stir fry. So if you're going to make chicken and broccoli or cashew orange chicken and you want to put broccoli stems in it, really, really easy to use. That one's easy. I'll skip to vegetable peels. So most peels, I would just save and make my stock out of the vegetable peels. But if you have potato peels, carrot peels, and sometimes parsnip peels, I'm not sure how many people are really going around worried about their parsnip peels, but those, if you toss those with a little bit of olive oil and then a spice blend, so use up, did you buy everything spice at Trader Joe's, or do you have za'atar, or or even like a fancy chili powder spice blend, toss those with the peels and roast them in a hot oven, like 450, toss them around a couple times. And it sort of is the texture and consistency of loaded potato peels, like you would get at an Applebee's or something like that, old school, like 90s appetizer, but with just the peels. Or it's also a cross between like shoestring French fries. The trick is you have to eat them as soon as they come out of the oven. So they make a great party snack, or I always call them chef snacks. I'll roast those at Thanksgiving if I'm peeling a lot of potatoes, and they taste amazing. If you have like a sour cream and onion dip too, dunk those in there. Super, super good. Or save them and you can put them all in your stock. It's probably the easiest use for those. And carrot tops, okay? I think carrot tops, I'm going to go on record. I know I'm being recorded. You can publish this. I think carrot tops are the most overrated anti-food waste poster child. I don't know, first of all, how many people are buying carrots that actually have the top still attached? Most of the time, people are not doing that, right? But if you go to the farmer's market and you get the carrot tops, everybody will say, like, make a carrot top pesto. It doesn't taste good. It really doesn't. Like, I've seen so many people post this recipe. They're too stringy. They don't have enough flavor. And they give you too many, right? If you buy one bunch of carrots, I could go through those carrots. I could go through 3 bunches of carrots a week for my family of 4, and I cannot go through 4 bunches of carrot tops. So I will be honest, I do not think carrot top pesto tastes good. That said, I have experimented with this a lot because I see carrot tops always paraded out as like the thing that people can't stop using up. I think it tastes better if you make more like a carrot top and herb chimichurri, which would be adding capers, tons of garlic, maybe some anchovy, red wine vinegar, lots of maybe some chili flakes, and then also add parsley stems or parsley cilantro stems, maybe even some basil if you have it, and then some carrot tops. So you can start to use up some of them in this way, but it really needs the other ingredients to balance it. Otherwise, it's just got kind of a weird texture to me. My other favorite thing to do with it has been to make carrot top hummus. So if you have garbanzo beans, and as you're blending those up with garlic and tahini and lemon and salt, you have a lot of like really bold, bright flavors. And you blanch a bunch of the carrot tops just at the end of cooking your garbanzo beans. So it helps soften them up a little bit. They'll get really bright green. Then you can go ahead and toss those in with the hummus and blend it up. So you get this really pretty, like pale green hummus, and you can use a lot of carrot tops up that way. Those are my 2 tips and my expose on carrot tops.
Awesome. I love it. I love your tips. I'll definitely be trying those this week.
All right. Let me know. I'd love to see photos of what you cook.
Okay. So moving on, we want to ask you a little bit about the current times and COVID-19. How have things changed at Ends and Stems? How has your work changed, and what adjustments have you had to make?
Yeah, great question. I think like everybody else, when it started, it was all just panic mode. It's, as a business owner, I spend so much time planning, and even planning like my social media posts. All of a sudden, 2 of them escaped because I didn't stop them in time. And then it was just this very tone deaf post that wasn't addressing the time. So I think it took everybody a while to kind of stop and regroup and figure out what was going on. So about a week before the shelter in place, I saw a lot of signups because people were stopping going out to restaurants and things and wanting to cook more. But then the first 2 or 3 weeks of shelter in place, suddenly nobody was even going to the grocery store. And it was hard to pivot quickly enough to completely redo the recipe plans. I'm usually planned with my recipes like 8 or 9 weeks in advance, sometimes even more. So it was really hard to, and I, have a professional photo shoot and all of this, that the ship just didn't turn that quickly. So it was pretty quiet there for a couple weeks as people were afraid to go to the grocery store. And the meal plans really are, here are 3 recipes you can cook this week. The ingredients interlock like a puzzle. So you're buying fewer things, but using them all up. But it really is sending people to the grocery store. So that week, I still published the recipes. I tried to go back into my arsenal and use more pantry-based recipes. So I repeated like a red lentil soup that didn't require, a lot of fresh vegetables and things like that. And I also spent that time putting together an ebook that was, easy to put together pretty quickly with free online tools. I use Canva a lot. And it was really just taking the other culinary tips that I have, how people could do their own meal plans, starting with what they have in their pantry. And then it was addressing how to make some common pantry ingredients taste bright and flavorful, what things you could do in your freezer. And I've had hundreds and hundreds of downloads of the ebook. So that went really well. So I considered it a win at that point, just to draw people into the community, be a resource for people. But the other thing that's come out of it that's really cool was there was this meme going around about every professional chef going on Instagram and doing an Instagram live from their pantries. But our pantries have crazy things in them that normal people don't have in their pantry. And it was this funny meme, and I did not want to be, another chef with a sourdough starter or embarking on this project that just wasn't speaking to what people were really struggling with. So I actually just took an old school piece of business advice, which was to ask my audience what they needed. And I had almost 100 questions submitted from, real customers and followers. Many of my customers and followers are parents. So, how were parents of young kids struggling during this time? So it's actually, I've used that to now reinvigorate my Facebook group with real questions and answers that people are actually having. So it's not how to make a sourdough starter a lot of the times. The question I just answered in my group today was, how do you, make a quick 10-minute dinner that I can still feel proud of and, still nourishes my family. So that's been great, because to be honest, I've wanted to have a dynamic Facebook group, but I haven't been sure how to kickstart it really. And so that's been a really positive outcome of this experience. And knowing, when people send me notes that they've cooked a recipe or it's genuinely helped them to get on their feet in the kitchen, I consider that a huge win. The other crazy thing to come out of this is that because people aren't rushing out to the grocery store every time they forget something, I think people are naturally trying to waste less food in this way that really aligns with what I've always been promoting. So a woman wrote to me and said her daughter just ate the bites of the apple that had the skin on it, but then all the other inside of the apple was still there. And it was a whole serving of apple. And she admitted that normally she would have just tossed it out and gotten a new apple for herself. But this time they only had 2 apples left and they weren't going to the store for a week. So she actually ate the apple. And then even better, next time she served her daughter apple, she sliced it up for her to make sure that she didn't do the same thing. And it's like such a perfect, step-by-step play of recognizing food waste, stopping the food waste by eating something that was maybe a little bit less than appetizing, and then making such a tiny, simple change to slice the apple and serve her daughter a smaller portion. It's like everything I'm always preaching. So that was really cool to see that. And I think that is happening, in homes across the country, which is exciting.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great to hear about you making the most of the situation and some of the benefits that are coming out from it amidst all the crazy and sad news that we're hearing.
Yeah, it's definitely been very hard. That is the positive side of things.
Yeah, sweet. So I guess kind of another follow-up question to that is, as you know, I'm sure most of us are cooking from home more than ever before. So I don't know if you have a few quick pointers, maybe just how to keep people in sort of a healthy or sustainable diet.
Yeah, my main tip to people is don't make it harder than it has to be. I think we see, again, these kind of Pinterest recipes or Instagram chefs or TV chefs who are doing these really elaborate things. And if you're not into that, if that's not fun for you, don't do it. Find something simple, make the sheet pan dinner, make a 1-pot soup, and really get your feet under you and find, again, little ways, kind of the theme of what I was saying before, find a little toehold where it's not torture to have to cook, 3 meals a day. Also, the easiest tip is find something that you love, cook a double batch or a triple batch, either freeze some of it or just admit that you're going to eat it a couple times that week, and then make something totally different next week. So humans can stand a little bit of repetition. And if you eat something 3 times one week, but then you don't have it again for 6 weeks because you cook something else the next week, it's actually not that repetitive. So just find ways that you can make it easy on yourself. And I think if you start to feel less overwhelmed by it and find little ways that it can be fun, or I was joking the other day, thank yourself or your roommate or your family for cooking for you. If you're alone and you don't have anyone to thank you, send me a picture. I will thank you for cooking for yourself, and I will be happy that you sent me a picture. Once you kind of get those little bits of positive reinforcement, you might find that it's a little bit more fun. So when it's a little bit more fun, you won't quite dread it as much. But go for the leftovers, eat things that are simple, keep it simple. Unless you love it already, and then by all means, go for it. Make pasta from scratch. You can geek out on these really elaborate meals, but only if that's fun for you.
Right. Yeah, I love those. Those are all perfect tips. So final question, do you have any parting remarks or any pieces of advice to anyone looking to transform their diet into something more sustainable?
Yeah, I mean, my tips are all, I would say, in the same category of things, which is, do one small thing at a time. So don't, like anybody embarking on any new type of diet, don't throw out what you did yesterday and then think you're going to start tomorrow as this brand new person. You won't stick with it. You'll fall off the wagon. If you're not used to cooking, cook once. Try baby steps to get there. And then as you see that it makes you feel good or you feel proud of yourself for trying to cook a new vegetable that you've never seen or cooked before, then you'll be encouraged to add more. And if you do too much too fast, like in anything, and it falls apart or it's too hard, you will quit on it. I also am not a big fan of any banned foods. I've had customers over the years who tell me when I was cooking for people, and they would say, don't cook any bad foods. And I'm like, I don't agree. There's no bad foods. I like the old Julia Child advice, just everything in moderation. So, try to get more sustainable in moderation. If you're not cooking, you know, if you're not buying any vegetables right now that you know where they come from, or they're not organic, or you don't know if they're part of a better food system, find one thing at a time and then make that change, and then give yourself some space and make another change. And you will get there slowly. We don't all have to do everything to really make a difference. Little baby steps to get there. And I've been sharing more tips and ideas than ever before on my Instagram and my Facebook page. So, and I honestly love connecting with the community or people who have specific questions. So, you know, reach out to me. I'm doing an AMA every Wednesday on Instagram. So send me your specific questions and I would be glad to address them.
Awesome. Well, we'll definitely do that. I love your pieces of advice. I love how you keep it real. Alison, thank you so much for joining us today. We've both learned so much, and it's been a true pleasure talking with you.
Thanks for having me. It's great to speak with you too.